All right, so we've got some things to download for today. And so we're starting with a lot of code already written for us in our sendgmail.xlsm file. So let's get sendgmail.xlsm downloaded. I've got that downloaded and opened. And the idea here today is that, question, go ahead. Oh, yeah. I know exactly where you're headed. I'm going to jump in because they can't hear what you're saying on Zoom. So a couple of administrative things. Thank you for bringing that up before we got too far into the material for today. So I had the exam set for December, like copied over from fall term. So the exam, you're not waiting till December for the exam. It's anytime during the final exam period. Just go over there and take it. Multiple choice, something similar to the midterm experience. This project, automating a web browser, this is the one that you're talking about, right? So yeah, the website that gets referenced for that assignment is this, faadata.blogspot.com. So let me put that back in there, FAA-data. So this assignment is actually having you get data that's like, it's public information from the FAA about who owns specific aircraft. And I guess that's public information. And I found the website years ago and I thought, oh, this is good data, but I really can't use it just as an assignment for a couple of reasons. One, the government might change that website at any moment, right in the middle of something, so that wouldn't be any good. And plus, the registration data changes, like someone else owns that plane, so it's tough for me to check to be sure you're getting the right data if it's changing from time to time. So I had a brilliant idea. I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a bunch of that data. So I got, I don't know how many, there's probably thousands and thousands of registrations. I got 500 of them and I built a blog with that same information. And I did a little bit of trickery to make it so that the search for the blog here would behave a little bit more like a server rather than a kind of normal blog search. Normal blog search is going to actually put the search parameters up here in the URL. And part of what I'm wanting you to do in this assignment is actually interact with this, not just format a URL and go there, but to interact with the page so that you would need to do this something with like with Selenium. And then sometime in the past week, something happened at Blogger to where the search wouldn't bring anything up, right? That's what you experienced, right? Yeah, you just search it and it's white. And I went and looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't figure it out. I don't know if someone at Google looked at what I was doing on this page and said, that's not a normal blog. Something's fishy going on here. And they did something to stymie me about that. So what I did was I made another blog. So instead of faadata.blogspot.com, this will now redirect to faadata.blogspot.com. So it redirects you to the same place, but you got to make sure that this is the URL that you're using. And this one works just fine. So I can put in here Cessna, CESSNA, and maybe I'm back to square one. I think I maybe just spelled Cessna wrong. So that will bring the information up. And if you've got both a serial number and a manufacturer, then I think it will work as well. So I haven't updated the assignment to get rid of that hyphen, but when you go there, it does redirect to the right page. So cross your fingers. I think you're going to figure it out. Okay. All right. Any other administrative questions? Okay, so I've downloaded my sendgmail.xlsm. We'll be working in that file. I am going to click on my email message.txt and my browser opens it up. Darn it, I really want to download this. So I'm just going to press Control S here, and that will let me save this from here. So I'm going to put this in downloads, email message.txt, that's fine. So I want them in the same place. So wherever I downloaded my send Gmail folder and my email message. We're going to go there in just a minute. Let's look at the links down here at the bottom. Okay, so first thing is that there's several ways that we can send email. One way that the book talks about is that if you're using Outlook, how many of you use Outlook? A few of you, maybe a third of us here using Outlook. So the book takes you through kind of the native way with objects that can just directly interact with Outlook and send through Outlook. Because most students don't use Outlook, I'll be showing you how to do it with Gmail today. So I'm assuming that you've got a Gmail account somewhere that you can use for this. Now, how many of you use Gmail as your primary email address? So it's most of us here. That's me too. To be able to send email with a client program through Gmail now, they're saying, listen, if you have to authenticate username and password, but we don't want you throwing around your real Gmail account username and password. We don't want you putting that in some kind of a app or something. And so they have a thing called an app password. You can actually go to your Gmail account and say, listen, I want to get a specific username and password that's meant just for me to embed into an app, so that when we're going to do the kind of stuff that we're doing here today, you could like revoke those permissions without having to change your normal authentication process. And so it's to keep your main credentials safer and to be able to kind of isolate, to say, you know what, I'm making a new username and password just for a particular application here. Now, to be able to do that, Google says, if you're going to make an app password, which is what we need to do this today, you've got to have two-factor authentication, dual-factor authentication. So how many of you are already using dual-factor authentication on your email account? You know, and when I say dual-factor authentication, it means when you put in your username and password, it says we're going to check and make sure you really are who you say you are by sending you a text message or having some other app on your phone to be able to do that. If you're not doing it, and we have to do that to your Gmail account to be able to do the example today. So we're going to take you through that process right now, but I'm going to encourage those of you who weren't previously doing two-factor authentication to leave that two-factor authentication on. The reason is that, well, how bad could your life get if someone got access to your, like, could actually get in and control your Gmail account? But someone going to send some emails in your name? That's not such a big deal. But it's more than that. What's the real threat if someone gets a hold of your email account? That's right. They're gonna like look through and say, oh, look, I see you're getting confirmations from Amazon. So I can see that you're using this email address at Amazon. I'm going to go there. I don't know your password, but I'm going to reset your password and it's going to send right back to this email address. And if you've got stuff in financial institutions, it can get ugly in a hurry. So if there's one thing that you should say, I'm going to be a little bit inconvenienced to really make this secure, it's that primary email account. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at, I'm going to follow this link and we're just going to kind of go through the instructions here for app passwords. So step one is you got to have two-factor authentication turned on. So I'm going to come here to where it says, two-factor authentication. Maybe I'll even split this so that I can see the instructions and do them at the same time. I'm going to go to my Gmail account. Actually says open your Google account. That's what I'm going to do. Last. The navigation panel, go to security. I wonder if my navigation panel isn't here because my thing's not big enough. My window's not big enough. Let's try it. There we go. Security. And I come down here and two-step verification. It's already on for me. If it's not on for you, go ahead and put it on. There's a way also that if you find this inconvenient, or you're worried what happens if I have to get into my email, I don't have my phone. You can like pre-print like a set of like one-time use codes as well. So I've done that. Like I carry those in my wallet. So if I ever need to get to my email, I don't have my phone, I've got some pre-printed codes that I can use. And so I usually either always have my phone or my wallet if I've forgotten one of them. Okay, so you want to make sure that you get that turned on. Is there anyone who's just kind of turning this on for the first time who needs some help? I don't even know what it looks like after this. I set this on so long ago. Any help here? Looks like we're okay. Okay, so activate two-step verification, sign on, get started, whatever, Google prompts. Okay, so that was two-step verification. Okay, so now we're back at using app passwords. So we're gonna go back to my Google account. Under security, I'm gonna come to app passwords. Oh, it's right under two-step verification, so it's right here. And it looks like I've got a password. Oh, it's gonna check to make sure I am who I say I am. Fortunately, my browser remembered that. All right, now, looks like this is the one I used last semester. I'm gonna delete that. I don't need that anymore. And I'm gonna generate a new app password. I think, oh, I gotta select an app here. I'll call it mail and select a device. Windows computer, interesting. I'm going to use Windows computer because I'm on a Windows computer. If you're on a Mac computer, I'm not sure which one you should choose. You should probably choose Windows because if you're going to be doing this example along with us on a Mac, I'm assuming that you've got the Windows version installed, so it'll see it as a Windows computer. And then I'm going to click generate. I'm going to actually take this off the screen. I don't want to publish that and someone be able to get my username and password. Okay, that's going to, in fact, let me just do this, Alt print screen. Let me just kind of show what this looks like. Almost there. I think I'm almost there. Okay. So it comes up with something that looks like this. You've got more digits here, of course, for yours, but that's what we're after. So that's the code that you want to have. Just don't save this. I'm going to copy that. This is Google will never show that to you again. So it showed it to you right now. There's no way that you can recover that. If you lose that code, you think, oh boy, I got that code, come back and get it. You can't get it. You have to create a new one and then just use the new one. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to put it in Notepad just to hold on to it because we're going to need it here in just a little bit. I think I'm going to open Notepad. Okay, so that then is my app password. It's the password that I can use to authenticate without having to use my real Gmail account. Okay, so we've got the app password set up. We've got Gmail. I think we're ready to take a look at our Gmail file. So I've already got that opened up here. So here's the idea. It's like, imagine that you've just got an internship or you've been hired by the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau and you've been assigned all of these cases. It looks like we're doing some kind of review of complaints that have been made against the anti-lock brake system. There's all a bunch of anti-lock brake stuff. And you've got someone who has sent in a complaint and we don't really have their email addresses. That's good because Sharon Schindel doesn't really want to get an email from you about this. But go ahead and put in here an email that you have access to, not the same Gmail account that you're using to send the email, but maybe your university account, some other email account that you can check. So I'm just going to put in my BYU account here, gov@byu.edu, and I'm going to copy that down. Okay, so this happened in Louisville, Ohio. Looks like they wrote the letter in 2019. Manufacturer of the car was General Motors. It's a Chevrolet Silverado. It's 2018 Silverado. It failed in January of 2019, something with the brakes. I'm dying to know what happened here. In cold conditions, while driving through small amounts of slush, brakes became inoperative. The left rear wheel locked up, causing an accident. So we get a little summary of the drama here. So the idea is you've been assigned to say, hey, reach out to these folks, let them know that this issue is under a serious review. And if they want to provide more information, then you give them your contact information so they can reach out to you. Just, let them know that we're really looking into this. So that's the idea. Now, what we're going to be doing, implementing here in Excel is a pretty straightforward mail merge, but of course we're going to be having, we're going to have the code that does it. And so you can apply this stuff to sending an email to all kinds of other situations. This is just kind of a straightforward example for doing this. All right, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and open up the text file that we initially downloaded, email message, and we'll take a look at this. So this is just, kind of similar to when we were writing our structured query language. I said, listen, I've got a template here that's going to be the same almost all the time. And then I'm just going to have some text in here that I can use to find and replace so that we can kind of customize these emails to these individual folks. So I'm looking at this one. And in fact, the way I've got this, and we'll work with this, but the way we've got this is that our first line is going to be the subject of the message. Now, you guys get all kinds of email that you never open, I think. I have, in fact, if we looked at my email address, there's like 30,000 unopened messages that are just sitting there never to be opened. So what are we going to do to get someone to open this message? Now, I drive a 1999 Ford F-350. And if I got a message that said, problem with your 1999 Ford F-350, I would think whoever is sending me this message knows enough to know the kind of car that I currently have. I'm probably going to open it up. That's not normal. That's not normal spam. It's good spam. If this is spam, it's really good spam. So the idea here is that we're going to plug in the data from a particular row here. Now, it seems like when I first made this example years ago, I was writing the code individually to put these in. But what we're going to do today is we're going to make a loop that's going to read the names of these columns, kind of a more general tool. Whatever column's out here, if it has a name that shows up in here as a tag, it'll just replace it. So let's just make sure that we've got these named correctly. So model year, I think, is called year TXT. So let me just replace this with YEAR TXT. The idea here is that I'm just going to make sure that the tags that I'm going to replace from here have the right, or have a tag that matches the header over here in the file. Make looks like make name. So let me just make that make name. Make name. Model name, I think, is model name. First name is, looks like it's just F name. So I'm going to come and adjust this one. When I heard about the trouble with your 1999 Ford F-350, I was deeply troubled. Make, we are evaluating the Ford anti-skid system. So let's take this to make name. System, I think, is the same. Failure, we don't have. We have the date that the failure is reported to have happened. So let's do this. I'm going to insert a column, maybe just right here before the fail date. And I'm going to call this fail year. And it's just going to be the year of this. Let's put a formula in there to calculate that year. And I could do that conversion in VBA pretty easily, but if I'm making a general tool here so that the data that's in the worksheet is just going to go into the sheet, it'll be nice to have this all as individual data. And then agent name, agent phone. We could put these as columns as well, but let me just go ahead. We got enough of that example, I think. So let me just go ahead and put this, I'm just going to hard code this into the file. Run. Okay, well, I think I've got this, I've got the file now configured the way I want it. I'm going to go ahead and save this. and email message.txt. I'm going to make one more change here in the data as well. And that is, instead of just assuming that's going to be the file that we're going to be opening our template, let's go ahead and add another column here right at the very beginning. So I'm going to leave column A just the way it is, but I'm going to say message here. So it'd be possible to say, listen, I've got 3 or 4 different templates, kind of depending on which could be a different style of message that I have to send. For this example, it's always going to be the same one. But let me just go ahead and put in here the name of that file as the parameter here. So we're going to kind of look at a row. We're going to say, all right, there's the template that we have to open. We're going to be sending this to Sharon. We're going to kind of configure that template. Then we're going to send that off as email. Because I think we've got the problem set up pretty well now. Any questions about where we're headed here? Let's go ahead and look at the code, because we've got kind of a lot of existing code here. So I'm going to open up that code, and we've got a couple of modules. So we've got module 1, which is this one that doesn't have too much code in it. We've got send mail here. We'll talk about setting the credentials here in just a minute. I've kind of got us started here, but the one that does the really heavy lifting is mod Gmail. So mod Gmail, dock this somewhere else. So this is a function that is kind of pre-set up to send email using your Gmail account. Now, so we're using some built-in objects, part of the Windows operating system. CDO stands for Common Data Object. And so we're going to say, listen, we're going to create a message that is an instance of this object. And we're going to set another thing called a config that's an instance of this object. So similar to working with a database server, whereas we have to have a connection and then a query that we send on that connection, we're going to have a configuration here that's going to get us hooked up to a mail server, and then we're going to send a message using that configuration. And so you can see we're passing in lots of parameters. We'll see how to use these here in just a second, but let's take a look. Now, this has all the specifics set up for working with Gmail. And so if you're actually sending with Gmail, then this function is going to work. It's ready to go. But let's suppose that you get to your job and you think, oh, I got to send mail, but I'm not using Gmail. I got to use my my business account here. So it'll take a couple of questions to the IT department, but you're going to find out, listen, we need to know some parameters about how to interact with our mail server here. And so a little Googling will find this for Gmail. So let's just kind of go through what these are. So the first one here, this schema is just actually what goes on the front of all of these. So this is just, the field that we're configuring here is this CDO configuration send using. That's what we're doing on this one. So we're just kind of shortening that line by using a variable name. And so send using here says there's different ways that these objects can interact with mail servers. And this one is, we're going to be using a port. We're going to use a port. So give it an IP address and a port, the two things that we need to be able to talk to any internet server. That's the method that we're going to use for sending this. So this just says that's the style of communication we're going to use. SMTP server then is the host name of the outgoing mail server. And so again, that's something that the IT folks will know if you're configuring this for a local client. So the port here is 465. And again, we can find that's publicly available for Gmail, but that's something you'd need to know. So it turns out that the default port for SMTP is port number 25. And back in the early days of Gmail, what is it, maybe around the late 90s, 97, 98, maybe 99. I'm trying to remember when I first got my Gmail account, but I think it was right around then. Back then, Gmail was using port 25. And when you're using port 25, it's typically you're saying, listen, we're not even going to authenticate. Like if you can connect up to this server, you can send a message. Don't have to provide a username or a password, just connect and send. It's actually the case with most of the protocols that we use on the internet. They were first designed for trusted networks, where if you had access to the network, we trusted you would behave well. That's a really bad assumption for the internet, because all kinds of crazy people have access to the internet. But for the first, oh man, it was years that Gmail was open. They had open, it's called an open relay server, where you can just bounce a message out. Anyone ever get a message from someone purporting to be like from someone you knew, and then you responded to it and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about? That happened? It doesn't happen all that often anymore. But yeah, you could just send your email and say, this is from the President of the United States, and there's some whitehouse.gov address for the president. And it would really look like that's where it came from. And it's just because that was the protocol. So when we get to port 465, typically that's requiring authentication. It's going to be encrypted and it's going to require authentication. It turns out that BYU actually, maybe I shouldn't say this, I shouldn't tell you this. BYU actually has an open relay server here on campus. They won't route port 25, and it's on port 25. It won't route port 25 traffic on any of the wireless networks, but if you can get to a jack, you can bounce email off without authenticating off of BYU server, comes through. And the interesting thing here is, if we look down to the message here, separate from authenticating, which is what this is, so the from is going to be your how you're authenticating, username and password. Use SSL says it's going to be encrypted traffic. But separate from getting authenticated on the connection, you can say who the message is from. So I teach a class to majors where we talk about this particular protocol, and I show them how to do this. And every semester they start sending email to each other as if it's from me. Like they will put it, this is from Professor Allen, you need to come see me in my office right away. And it's great fun for the first 2 or 3. After that, it gets old. Anyway, try to tell them to stop. You just can't stop. Okay, so this then block up here is what's getting us connected. And again, just for using Gmail, it's pre-configured. You may have to reconfigure it for a different environment. Then we've got the message. So this is who we're going to send the message to. Again, who you're sending it from here, the protocol allows us to say this is from some email address, some name, but Gmail is like, I don't care what you give me for this. I'm going to ignore this because this is who the message is from. So even though the protocol allows it, and I'm leaving it in here just so you can see that it's there, you don't have that kind of power with Gmail anymore. You set the subject, set the body. Now, it turns out we're just going to send text. The body's just going to be text. But if you want to, there's a separate body called the HTML body. You could format HTML to build tables and bring in images and so forth, and you can send an HTML message. In fact, it's possible to specify both of those. So if you get a client that knows how to render HTML, it'll show it as HTML. If you have one that doesn't know how to render HTML, which is no client you've ever heard of lately, it'll fall back to the text message. Sender and organization, I don't think I've ever used. I'm not sure if you can even do that at all through Gmail, but you can specify the reply to. And I guess you've seen that where you hit reply and it responds to someone else besides who actually sent the message. So you can specify a different account here to reply to. Now, I'm not in this function. I haven't given you that parameter. So it would take a little work to get this to allow you to do reply to. I do, however, give you an optional attachment here, which is a path to a file that you want to attach to the message. And if attachment is supplied, then it will call the add attachment method of the message, and it'll embed that file into the message. You'll notice that this is a method, so you can call this over and over again. You can put multiple attachments to an email, but the way that I've written this function, it's only going to take one. So if you really want to do multiple, you'd have to send in an array or a comma separated list or something, and then turn this into a loop. So it would take a little bit of work there. So at this point, then we've got the message configured, we've got the connection configured. We then just have to say, hey, that message is going to use the configuration that we set up, and then we're ready to send the message. Now, I've got this in a try, or I've got this in an on resume, like a little error trap here, because if I have some problem interacting with the mail server, it's going to throw an error, and I'd like to handle that gracefully. So we're going to try to send the message. Now, what could cause it to fail? Well, if I have the wrong host name, if I have the wrong port name, if I have the wrong username, if any of this stuff is wrong, it could fail. It could also fail if the email address that I'm sending to is not well formed. Like if I said this, I'm trying to give this message to you, immediately that mail server is going to look at the email address and it's going to go, yeah, there's no way, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's not a valid email address. I can't send that. So that's another reason that this could have an error message. So if after we send the message here, if the error number is 0, what does that mean? No error. Tried to send it, there was no error. I'm just going to say, great, set the name of this function equal to true. So this function itself will return true or false based on whether there was an error trying to dispatch the message. If it, so it returns true. If it returns false, or if there is an error number, any error number, it's going to return false. So we can read that to know, did we send it successfully or not? And then it's going to print this in the immediate window so we have some more information about what that is. And then we're just closing down the object. So that's the process of sending the mail. Again, nothing to change here for doing Gmail. Questions on what we saw here? Go ahead.
Notice it's a function, not a sub-procedure. The reason why we're doing a function is to make like a certain output. What it's like output.
Yeah, let's take a look. So you notice it's a function procedure, not a sub-procedure. And it's called send to Gmail. So I'm going to call this by saying something equals send to Gmail and give it all the parameters. How do I tell a function what to return? In a lot of other languages, like the C-based languages, you actually, there's a statement called return. You say return, and that's the value that the function sends back. That's not how I do it in VBA. How do I set the return value of a function? Setting the name of the function equal to the value I want to return. It's kind of a weird thing, I will admit. And that's what I'm doing here. So after I send the message, if there's no error, I'm going to set the return value for the function equal to true. So this function will evaluate to true or false based on whether there's an error trying to send the message. I won't know if the user received the message because I'm just talking with that mail server. That mail server is going to say, yeah, I can dispatch that, using SMTP and communicate with other mail servers, and it gets sent around the internet. I might find out 48 hours from now if it got rejected, but my code's long gone by then. So I'm only going to know, did I successfully connect to the server and dispatch the message? Don't know if anyone received it. And even if they received it, won't know if anyone ever looked at it, if we got filtered away to spam or something. Okay, so yeah, that's why this is a function, is so that we can know if it successfully sent or not. Other questions? Okay, so let's go ahead then and use this over here in module 1. Well, actually, before we do that, let's look at the form. So I've made a form here called FRM password. What FRM password is going to do is it's going to allow me to take those credentials, that password that I had, and be able to store it in this workbook securely. To do that, it is going to encrypt both the username and the password using a key that you give it. So the idea here is that when you first go to send this, you're going to have to provide the key, which is going to be like the password that's just set up for this workbook. It will then use that to decrypt the username and password. And then as long as your code doesn't crash, it'll remember that your authenticated username and password. You can kind of send on from there without having to re-put in any credentials. The point is that password that we got, the app password, is not one you're ever going to memorize, right? It's just a crazy random set of letters. Mine doesn't even have any numbers in it, but it's just a bunch of letters. Okay, so what this code is going to do when I click OK is it's going to put some information onto a worksheet called credentials. And it's going to, so we've got a function here that's going to encrypt stuff, right? So I've got some string that I want to encrypt. I'm going to give it the key that I want to use to encrypt it. And then we can use that same key to decrypt it. But I'm just going to put this string into cell A1 on a sheet called credentials. And then when I try to decrypt it, if it decrypts to say text to verified key, then I know that that was the right key. If the key is wrong, it'll decrypt. It's going to, the decrypt function is going to give me back something. This is going to let me know if it was correct. And then I'll know that I've got the username and the password by decrypting these other ones that are here in range A2 and 3. Now, if I look at this worksheet, it's called credentials. If I look over here, I can see that it's called credentials both in its code name as well as on the sheet name. So I'm going to come over here to my workbook, but wait a minute, I don't see that sheet here. Why not? Well, you might say it's hidden. How do you unhide a worksheet? I can never remember. Can you just right click here and say unhide? Hide. Oh yeah, you can just right click any sheet and say unhide, but there's no, unhide is grayed out. That's because this is not just hidden. This is very hidden. And that's actually what it's called. I'm going to look over here at the visibility. Let me come over here and select like my data sheet. And I can see that sheet is visible right here. Let me use it here. So when I choose data, I can see that one is visible. If it was hidden, it would say like Excel sheet hidden. But when I look at credentials, it is very hidden. All right, those are my three choices: visible, hidden, or very hidden. If it's very hidden, you've got to open up the Visual Basic editor to unhide it. There's nothing in the Excel environment that will let you unhide that sheet. So this is going to hide a sheet from who? Edna in accounting, from your mom. It's not going to hide a sheet from anyone in this class, you know, because they could just come in here, open up the Visual Basic editor and unlock it. Now, if you have put like protection on the code, I'm trying to think if you can get to it. You might be able to like password protect your module. They may not be able, but the passwords we put on modules are kind of easily crackable. So just because it's on a hidden sheet doesn't mean it's like totally protected, even if it's very hidden. And in fact, if the user can figure out what the name of the sheet is, then they can just go look at cells on that sheet through code, even if they can't unhide it. So being very hidden just means it's going to protect it from the novice user, right? Okay. Windows minus. But that's okay. That's why I'm also not just putting it on a very hidden sheet. That's why I'm also encrypting it when I put it there. All right, so this code here, we're not really going to dive into this code, but I just want to kind of show that to you because I'm about to put those credentials onto that hidden sheet. So up here in my ribbon, I've got a tab for email. And I think it's next class. I think it's Wednesday that I'm going to show you how to put ribbon modifications to a workbook. So wherever that workbook goes, the tab will follow it. So here we've got for sending mail, setting credentials, and clearing credentials. So let me go ahead and just set credentials. Okay, so here the key, this is going to be, you know, me typing in what I'm going to have to remember to unlock the credentials here. So this just might be a password that I use, you know, that I can remember well. Type it in here. You're going to want to, if you're going to do this example, you want to do this along because this is where we're putting the credentials in. Oh, username. I don't think I have to put the @gmail.com. I think, ooh, I've forgotten here. So I'm just going to put in my email address, govallen. I am going to go ahead and put that @gmail.com. If not, we'll have an error and we can come back and adjust it. And then I'm going to copy and paste that app password that I made at the beginning of this class. That clock is really off. Someone look at that clock and tell me it's really off. Okay, just checking. Okay, so now that should have put those on that credential sheet. Let me go ahead and just unvery hidden it. Not sure there's a really good way to say that. Unvery hide. I'm gonna unvery hide it. I'm gonna very unhide it. That sounds better. I'm gonna very show it. That's better. If I can remember how to do it. Credentials and change this to visible. So now there's credentials sheet, and then here's the data encrypted. So, you know, without that key, this data is useful. And that key is only right in here. Locked away in the steel sieve. I'll forget it by next semester for sure. Okay, so I'm going to go back and set that back to very hidden. Okay, now we've got the password in there. I think we're ready to get down to business. Come to my data sheet. And oh yeah, we've got to write the code. We still got a lot of code to write. So let's take a look then at what else we have here on module 1. So our credentials now have been set. Oh, and that's only good until I have an error. I'll probably have an error while I'm running this. We'll have to put those credentials in again. I've got some variables set up here. And here we're checking this. We're saying, listen, we've got a password variable. Where is it? Password. We're just plugging it in right here. Username, password. Okay. So if either our username or our password is blank, then the length of one of those will be 0. If I multiply the length of those together, the whole thing will be 0. So if either one of those is blank, we're going to show the dialog box to get the credentials. I actually think I probably want these declared as module level variables, but let's leave them there for now. Okay, so now we've got here, and so now we've got the username, we've got the password. We're now ready just to go about sending the message. So let's go ahead and get ourselves started. Now, if I look at this, it's going to take a few seconds to send each message. And so I've got to, you know, give myself some way to see that I'm still working. And so it's part of what I'm doing here in column A is I want to be able to see that I can see the time that the message got sent. But the second thing that's going to happen, it's going to be nice, is that let's suppose I get partway through this message and there's some kind of error that stops my code. I want to be able to pick up where I left off. And so kind of step 1 is going to be able to say, listen, I want to find the cell where I should be working here. And if this has, you know, today's date in it, then that's one's already been sent. So let's start off by getting our R set there. So let's start R equal to data. The name of the sheet that we're on is data. And I'm going to want cells. Which row do I want? Data.rows.count, the very last. If I've got 1,000,000 rows here, that's going to be 1,000,000. I've got 1.04 million rows. And I want column 1 from there. I'm going to do an end XL up. And I want to know the row that hits. And that's going to be the first one that has data looking up from the bottom. So I'm going to add 1. So that's going to get R set at the first, kind of looking up from the bottom, it's going to be the first blank row. So now I want to put myself into a do loop to kind of work with R. So do events. R is going to get incremented. R equals R plus 1. And now here I'm ready to get down to the business of working on that particular row. So I found the row that I want to work on. Step 1 is going to be reading in that file. So let's read the file in. Where's the file? File is in column B. So I think I've got a template up here. I'll just read it into the message. So message is going to equal Need a little more work here because we've got to open up that file. So let's open. And now we've got to get to that file. So this workbook. Dot path ampersand the path separator. And then it's going to be whatever I've got in column 2. So data dot cells, row number R, column number B. So that should open. Oh, that's going to be the path I want to open for input as number 1. Message equals input number 1 Okay, so last time we worked with text files, we read them one line at a time. This one is going to be short. I just want to read it into a variable in memory. But I just forget the order of the arguments. So let's take a quick look. Input, file number, variable list. That's not the one I want. Input function. Input file number and the example. So the number here is how many characters. So this is getting one character. That's what we need to see. Okay. So we're going to call the input function message equals input. And I'm going to tell it how many characters I want to read. I want them all. We'll see that in a minute. And I'm going to tell it from which file I'm reading that. So if I put 100 here, it'll read the first 100 characters. I want to read them all. Fortunately, there's a function that will tell me how many characters are in the file. It's called LOF, length of file 1. So that says read the whole file. And then I'm ready to close that file. Close number 1. So I'm just going to run to there and see if I've got everything going well. Close number 1, stop. Okay, so I should just be able to run send mail. It's going to ask me for my key. Oh, good news, it remembers that. Okay, so I should be able to see my username here. And so I know I've got my username. So my username is filled in. My password will be filled in as well. Let's see what message is. Looks good. I've got the full text for that message. All right. So next, because I've got that file actually has the first line of that file is my subject, I'm going to have to split that subject off. So let me declare another variable up here called position as an integer. And I'm going to find where that, that character is. So before, when we're working with files, we're reading one line at a time. So we only have one line, but now I've got the whole thing. So remember that the way that that text editor knows to wrap that file, to wrap the line down here is because there's a non-printable character here. It's character number 13 is the one that we're after. So I want to find where character number 13 is. So in string, starting at the first character, looking at message, and looking for character number 13. That should show me where that is. So if I ask for the 50th character, what should it be? It should be that bracket right there, because the 51st character is the return character. So let me just look for the mid of, or let's do this. Let's take the left of the message, 50 characters. And that gets me that message off. Okay, so it gets me the subject from the message. Already got subject declared as a variable. So subject is going to equal the left 50, but of course I don't want 50 to be hard coded there. So let me bring in the one that figures out where this is. That's going to give me, so that expression right there is going to give me the 51. So I want to subtract 1 off of it. So that should give me the subject. So now I've got the subject in its own variable. So now I don't need that subject as part of the message. So let's set the message to be a little bit different. So let me come up here and just look for the mid of my message, starting at, if I start at 50, we'll go ahead and start at 50. That should give me that closing bracket and then the carriage return sequence. Doesn't like my M here, I think. So there's the closing bracket and then the carriage return and then the rest. So one more will get me to the return character. I don't want that. And the return character is actually a 2-character sequence. So I don't want 51, 52. I think I want 53. Oops, this one. Let's see if that starts in the right place. Yeah, starts right there with dear. I don't have I'm not broken down for an extra line. So I want 51 plus 2 for this one. So my message is going to equal the mid of message beginning at, oh, hey, I made a whole variable for position. I forgot to use it. Position, because I needed to use it in both places. Okay, so I'm reading the position in where it finds that carriage return character. I'm using it here, and then I will use it here as well. So that should give me now the subject and the message separated off of that file. Whew. Keep looking at the wrong clock. Okay, so now I want to take that message and I want to fill in all the information from the tags. And actually, I think I want to do that before I split the subject off. So let's come up above this little bit, because right now, right up here, message has everything, and I've got parameters in the subject and the body. So this will let me treat them together, and then we'll split them apart afterwards. So now what I want to do is I want to just go across all of my columns. So starting with column C, I just want to say, listen, I don't know if that message might have a tag here for first name, but if so, let's do the replacing. I don't know if it has a last name, but if so, let's replace it. So we're going to have a loop that goes across all these columns and pulls in those values. So I'll do another do loop here. Do events. This one is going to use our column. So what did I call it? I just called it C here. So this is going to be C equals C plus 1. And let's start C off at 3. And we're going to do until our data sheet dot cells row number 1, column number C until its value is a 0-length string. So as long as I've got a header value as I'm looking across, I'm going to stay in this loop. And what's this loop going to do? It's just going to replace what's in message. Message equals replace, look at message, look for something, replace it with something. Oops. Just going to go ahead and put the syntax in there so I can then work inside of it. So I'm looking for something. What am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for something wrapped in tags. And I'm reading that off of that column here. So I'm looking for something that has opening angle bracket, has this, but my tags up here are in all uppercase, and that's not the case in my label. So let me uppercase them here. In case. So I'm looking at my message. The first time through here, I'm looking for F name in capitals and inside of those angle brackets. I'm going to try to find that. And what am I going to replace it with? I'm just going to replace it with whatever is on my current row in that same column. So instead of looking at row 1, I'm looking at row R. So it's going to look for the label and replace it with whatever data is on that sheet. Oh, I like it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and come back up here to where I'm opening the file because I think I'd ran and split that already. So let me go ahead and open that file to read the data in again. Okay, so I'm just going to see where I am here. So I'm on F name. Go ahead and step through that. Should have just changed method. Now I'm on L name. There's no L name to replace. We'll go through this a few more times. Maybe I'll just run to position here. And now I'm going to look at that message again. So now message is all configured. Problem with your 2018 Chevrolet Silverado. Dear Sharon, you ever get an email like this? I think, so we could kind of put these into proper case for those who want proper case, but I think probably the right way to handle that is actually to change the data. Oh, the data is proper out here. That means I copied more than I wanted to here. So let me get rid of that U case. That'll be better. Yeah, Chevrolet model name, that looks better. Okay, so I think at this point, we're now configured. We're going to split off the subject from the message. And now we're ready to send that message. What do we do? Well, we're going to call that send Gmail function. And whatever it sends back, let's just do this. Let's just put an if statement, and we can have the if statement just drive us differently based on whether it returns true or false. So I'm going to say if send Gmail. This is, I don't think we've done this before, but this is a really common thing. If I've got a function that returns true or false, I'll call that function from an if statement, and then it's going to send back either true or false, and then we can use that to decide what to do. Okay, so who are we sending this to? Well, let's see, their email is in column E. So we're sending it to whichever row that we're on, column E. That's where the email is. Who are we sending it from? Username. What's the password? PW. What's the subject? Subject. What's the body? Message. And there's no attachment. B, thank you. Okay. So I'm going to let's see, if it's successful, let's just go ahead and write into that line. So row number R, column number 1 is going to equal now. So that'll just read the current time off the system clock. It's going to show me when that was successfully sent. Otherwise, why don't we put onto that same cell failed? So that way, the next time if I come back, if I stopped on one that failed, I'm not going to try to send that again unless I adjust that, because there'll be something there indicating that that one's already been processed. All right, which one am I going to hit? I don't know. I'll put a breakpoint on both of these and then just hit F5. Good news. It successfully sent that message. So now we're going to write into that F8, I think, F8. And then we skip over that and we are now done sending that first message. Should be able to come over here and go to my account. Let's see. Let's go to, I have my email, my BYU mail routed to my Gmail account anyway, so let's take a look for it there. Hasn't come through yet. Let me check, look at BYU server. Seems like it should have been here already. Other new conversation. That's a long time ago. That was Friday. Didn't have an error. It came through here. Anyone get that message to come through where they could see it? That worked for you? Has it not worked? Is there anyone out here who's going, I'm trying, but it's not there? BYU has a pretty aggressive filter that takes some time to get through sometimes, but I think it should be there by now. I'm going to go look in my sent mail. Yeah, so I can see that it got sent out. It just hasn't arrived yet. So I'm hoping that's just kind of sitting there at BYU's filter trying to get through the queue. Okay, last thing to do for today is, so that's sending the email message. Of course, there's a loop through and just kind of continue going through that list. What I would like to do when I get all the way done with that loop, it's going to take, I don't know, several seconds to send each one. If I've got a lot to do, I want to go get a ham sandwich while it's working on that. And I'd like it to notify me when it gets back. So I'm going to have it send me a text message. Good news is that sending a text message is just exactly the same as sending an email if you know the email to text gateway for that carrier. So if I come back to my code over here on system info, I've got several of these set up here for you. So I think my phone is on AT&T. So this is the prefix that we need to be able to use an email client to send a text message to a phone. And it's just going to be the 10-digit number at then that domain. So let me just copy my send Gmail again. And after this loop, I'm going to say, I copied too much. Send Gmail. Who am I sending it to? I'm sending it to me. whoops, no hyphens, at that domain. So all of the major carriers support this ability to send an email and have it rerouted to a text message. Username and password will be the same. Subject, I'm going to leave the subject blank. And the message is going to be master. I have done your bidding. Prefer my technology to have a proper deference to me, the creator. So just go ahead and, oh, now I've got an error here. What's the error? Who sees the error? It's so easy to make. It's the parentheses. The parentheses. Up here, I'm doing something with the return value. I'm using it as the input to an if statement to decide what to do. Down here, I'm not just doing it. I'm assuming it's going through. So I could get rid of those, or I could do this. I'll just print the results. And then that should print true or false, depending on whether it succeeds or not. So it looks like it successfully sent that. Oh no, quick, turn my phone so you can hear it. Is it too late? Blast. Okay, we're trying it again. Any second now. So, and it says, Master, I have done your bidding. See, yeah. Okay. So, boy, that's it. I kind of hurried a little faster than I needed to. We've got 4 minutes to go. Let's go ahead and check and see that other message finally came through. You can see that we dispatched it. Oh, I didn't think about that. So let's come look in spam. You'll see what kind of spam messages I get. Zoom invitations go there, by the way. Let's look at BYU. So filter. No, I don't know where that one went. You saw that we send it. Maybe I had my email address wrong. If I had my email address typed wrong, that would behave just that way. No, gov@byu.edu. I'll put the @gmail.com on there. If that was wrong, it wouldn't have authenticated, never would have dispatched it. We heard the text message come through. We saw that it's actually been sent by Gmail. So I'm not sure why that's lost. Okay, that's sending text messages and email. Questions? The part where we're sending the message? I just dragged out of it. Oh, yeah, that's no good. There's no exit clause. So yeah, let's go ahead and put an exit clause on this. So let's do this until data row number R, column number 2 is equal to a 0-length string. Do until. So we're going to start by coming up from the bottom to find where we want to start, and then we're going to continue to go down until we run out of data in column 2. right here. And let me just make sure we're incrementing R. I think I did put that in, yeah. So we're counting R up each time. Thank you for pointing out that I'd forgotten to get out of that loop. Good thing I put do events in at the very beginning when I was just getting it started. Other questions? All right, we'll call that good for today. Thanks for coming, and I will see you on Wednesday.